All right, guys, welcome to the Go Accomplish More podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I know it's been like 2 weeks since the last episode, and I have been really busy flying across town, going to different meetings. But a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to spend 2 days inside Acquisition.com's headquarters in Las Vegas at Alex Hormozi's Scaling Workshop. And let me tell you, those 2 days were amazing. I didn't go looking for motivation. I went looking for better ways to grow Go Staffy and become a stronger leader. So today, I don't want to recap the entire workshop, but instead, I want to share the 5 mindset shifts that impacted me the most and that I believe every agency owner can apply to grow their business. My hope is that by the end of this episode, you'll walk away with at least one idea you can implement this week. So let's jump in. So shift number 1, in order for you to become a great CEO, you got to stop managing and start investing, right? And what do I mean by that? Is that one of the first lessons that challenged me was this. Great CEOs don't spend their days solving every problem. They think like investors. They constantly ask, where should I invest my time, my money, and my team to create the biggest return? That simple shift changed how I think about leadership. When you look at this, what Alex Hormozi is saying is that you need to learn how to distinguish managing and investing. As a CEO, you can be micromanaging and you need to think more like an investor. In other words, how can I bring more ROI to this agency? How can I bring more retention to this agency? And then you need to figure out what are the things that you need to invest in order for you to reach that goal. That was really, for me, mind-blowing because a lot of times we catch ourselves doing the things that we shouldn't. You can't be solving every problem in your agency. You need a real good team in order to help you. You need better systems, but I think it starts with the team, right? How it's changing my leadership style at Go Staffy, we're already making some adjustments, right? We have to think higher picture. And if you start thinking like an investor, you're going to be able to solve those problems. And that's a question I ask you, right? Does your calendar reflect the business you're trying to build? Because if it's constantly putting out fires and constantly managing but not investing, then you're not going to be able to grow, right? Shift number 2 is find a constraint. And this one was really, really powerful for me because a lot of times we forget about it, right? So if there's one idea repeated throughout the whole workshop, it was this one. Every business has constraints, no matter what, or what I call bottlenecks. Growth doesn't come from fixing everything, but it comes from identifying the one bottleneck that's holding everything else back and focusing your energy there. See, a lot of times we have a lot of things that are important, but it's not fixing the actual constraints, like the most important constraints. And what are some things that you can have that are constraints, right? And I think every business has this, right? So you can have a hiring constraint, right? Because you don't have enough people. You can have a sales constraint. You're not getting enough sales in your agency or business. You can have a marketing constraint. You can have a leadership constraint. You can have client retention issues or client retention constraints. So you need to evaluate your agency. What are the top 2 constraints right now that is holding me back from massive growth? And when you do that, then you need to put all your focus and all your attention to those constraints. Whether if it's sales, then you need to start hiring the right person for that role. Maybe you need to create a better VSL letter, like VSL video, right? Focus all the activities that you need to be doing on that constraint. That's what we're doing right now at Go Staffy is like, sometimes we focus on shiny object syndrome, or we're doing things, maybe switching to a better CRM, which those are important things, but is it actually fixing the constraint that we're having in order for us to scale? If you could solve only one problem this quarter, what would it be? What is that constraint that is stopping you from growth in your business, right? Or in your agency? All right, so shift number 3 that I learned from the event was numbers create clarity. And we all know this, right? Knowing the numbers that actually drive decisions. Revenue alone isn't enough. Understanding metrics like customer lifetime value, CAC, right? Like, customer acquisition cost and retention help you lead with clarity instead of assumptions. Most businesses know what their LTV is. But a lot of them don't know, how much does it cost to acquire a customer, right? If you don't know your numbers, it's like you're going in there blind, right? You're not going to know if you're advertising too much or if you need less advertisement. Maybe you're spending too much money on certain things. So revenue is not going to tell you the whole story, as you know. As you start scaling any type of agency, you will realize that retention becomes a big deal, right? Because it's easier when you have only 10 or 20 clients, right? Retention can be really good because it's less clients to take care of. But once you start having 100 clients, things can get messy if you don't have a good retention strategy. So you want to make sure that you're taking care of retention because that's going to increase the LTV, right? Lifetime value. And then you want to make sure that the cost, you keep cost at bay to get new clients, right? You don't want to go. Now, if you know that if you spend $1, you're going to get $1,000, or if you spend $1 to get $10, then the math is simple. Why not do it, right? If you're going to get more out of it. So he explained the analogy, which was really good. So that was one of my biggest takeaways, is that you need to know your metrics so that you can track better and so that you can grow. All right, shift number 4 is focus is your competitive advantage. So true, right? Like one thing I kept thinking about after the workshop was how easy it is to confuse being busy with making progress, right? Real growth usually comes from doubling down on what matters most, not chasing every new opportunity. And this goes back to once you figure out the constraints of your company, you want to focus 1000% on those constraints. You want to make sure that you're hiring the right people to fix that constraint. You want to make sure that if you're going to buy a software, that it has to be related to that constraint. Because if you know that if you fix that constraint, you're going to double in revenue or you're going to improve retention, why not do it? Why not put all your effort in that constraint so that you can grow? What happens is that most agency owners, they do things that feel good. They don't attack the constraint where they need to. And then in the end of the day, they're not focusing 80% of their attention or 100% on that constraint. So he kept on hitting us with focus, focus, focus. The other thing is you want to make sure that when you do have any marketing ideas, any new offers that your marketing team wants to give you, any new ideas, that it's all about related to whatever the constraint is for that quarter. What we're going to be doing at Go Staffy is we're going to be reviewing every single quarter those constraints, those real important constraints that if we know, if we can solve those constraints, it's going to bring massive growth to that area and to the agency. Sometimes you got to say no, and that's going to create more growth in your company. So there's going to be good ideas thrown at you, but maybe those good ideas are not solving, the actual constraints that you need to improve in or that you need to surpass. Okay. One of the things that we're going to be focusing on is we're looking at how can we improve customer satisfaction? How can we improve just giving more excellence, right? I mean, I always give the analogy of, the Magic Kingdom, right? Disney World. If you drop a piece of paper on the floor, that paper will be picked up within 5 minutes or less, right? Because they have a service of excellence. They have a level of excellence that they want to make sure people come back, right? So I think, and the analogy is true, is that once you get a new customer, right, it's easier to retain a customer than to get always new customers always. And it costs more too. It costs less to retain the customer so that customer starts buying more from you, right? If they're happy, they're going to continue coming back, right? All right, so shift number 5 is build around the constraint, which I kind of spoke a little bit on 4. My biggest takeaway wasn't another strategy. It was realizing that great companies grow by putting the right people on the biggest problems. So instead of asking, what do we need to do? I started asking, who do we need? Because one of the things he said was, which is so true, is that if you're having a problem, if you're having a constraint problem within, let's say, a certain department, it's not a systems problem. Some people think that it's a people problem. Because if you have had that same constraint or that same problem for months, if the right person was there, that right person will figure it out. That person will probably create a better workflow, a better system. I mean, the system can't do it by itself. You need a human to actually improve the system. And you want to make sure that you mentor that person, you guide that person so that they can fix it and so that they know that, hey, they need to get on the ball, right? Hiring great people will help you remove bottlenecks. That's the key. Because if you hire A players, the A players are going to learn what they need to learn. They're going to be curious. They're going to do the research that is needed. They're going to find the solutions to that problem, to that bottleneck. Leadership, continue hiring great leaders. They also talked about self-development, how important self-development is in everyone's life, right? If you're not growing, you're dying, like Tony Robbins says. So you want to make sure that you have great leaders that are pouring into themselves, right? Priorities, right? You want to make sure that if you do hire these individuals, you want to make sure that their priority is going to be that they're all in. So one of the executives, that I spoke with, they were talking with Alex Hormozi, and he told him that if he wanted to be hired within the company, he needs to commit for 10 years. Literally, that was on the interview. Like, hey, are you willing to work here for 10 years? Because we want people that are committed, right? So when he told me that, I was like, wow, because in my interview, like we asked people like, hey, are you committed for the next 1 or 2 years? But they actually go and say, hey, like, are you committed for the next 10 years? That blew me away. So they're really all about investing in people. And I think that one lesson I learned is that you need great people, right? To build great companies. You need great people and you need to invest in people as well. So how that changes my hiring decisions? A lot. We have changed a few things. Of course, we're very picky on who we hire as well, but definitely what they do, they take it to the next level. And I really, really adopted a lot of ideas that they gave me, which we're going to be adopting because we do hire great people. But in the end, some of the questions they ask to those interviewees were really, really good. And some ideas were amazing. So guys, those are the 5 shifts. And I'm going to repeat them once again. So shift number 1, what I got from the event is stop managing and start investing. Shift number 2 is find the constraint, find the problem. Where are the major bottlenecks that we can focus on? Shift number 3 is numbers create clarity. So you need to know your numbers. Shift number 4 is focus is your competitive advantage. Make sure that you focus and don't get distracted with shiny object. Shift number 5 is build around the constraint. So whatever the constraints are, make sure that you're building towards breaking that constraint. And what are we going to be doing now at Go Staffy, and maybe you guys can learn as well, is we're identifying the biggest constraints for this quarter. And we already know what they are. We already know all the constraints. So now what we're going to do is we're hiring the right people that are going to help us eliminate that constraint. We're also improving our scorecards and KPIs. We can always find room for improvement there. We're going to also protect leadership time for better thinking, for higher thinking, because a lot of times the leaders are busy probably doing manual work or things that maybe they have to do. But if you don't block time for deeper thinking, we're never going to have the time to grow, right? So stay focused on fewer and higher impact initiatives. So it's just leveling down on what's most important. And these are some action items that I leave you today, is that you need to identify your biggest business constraint. Because if you don't, you're just going to do things that feel good or things that are important, but they're not really fixing the main issue or the main bottlenecks. So once you have the business constraints, ask your leadership team, hey, do you agree that we should be focusing on these 1 or 2 constraints so that we can focus and grow? Okay. And then choose the 3 numbers you're going to review every week. What are those KPIs? What are those numbers that you're going to be looking at constantly? Maybe if it's a lead flow issue, you're going to be looking at how many appointments we're getting, right? Maybe you're having that's one of your biggest constraints. Maybe it's retention. So you're looking at, okay, this is the number. I want to keep that under 5%. And then the other action item is eliminate 1 distraction, because we all have distractions. Because as you start removing distractions, it's going to help you grow. And then the last one is to commit to solving 1 major bottleneck over the next 30 days. And I believe if you do that, it's going to help you grow. And like I said, The 2-day event was amazing. Besides all the tactical stuff I learned, there were great people at the event, was able to network, was able to rub shoulders with other businesses that are having the same issues, that are having the same constraints. All right, guys, that's all I have. If you received value from today's episode, I really appreciate if you'd follow or subscribe to the Go Accomplish More podcast. Or if you know someone that needs to hear this episode, make sure to share it with them. Thank you so much.